Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to the day 2 of the Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 EU Circuit Standard Tournament. I'm joined once again by JJ, also known as GG Mr. Rogers, and Eric, also known as Mr. Time Leap of Vanguard Insider. And of course, once again, my name is Ben, also known as Zistral of Yellow Card Vanguard. For those of you who are just joining us from the AO Top 8, welcome. Hopefully you guys had an interesting Top 8 to watch. Congratulations to all the players that did well there. And we have our own top 8 here for you today, the last final stage of the Vanguard Circuit Online before we move into the BCS season. Gentlemen, we had a few interesting matches of Standard over the last 8 rounds of Swiss yesterday, and I think we can look forward to some more great rounds of Swiss today as well. How are you guys feeling?
Just fantastic, man. Well rested, well relaxed, also well hydrated, so we're good to go. I'm good to go. What about you, Eric? How are you feeling?
I feel a bit conflicted because I'm very excited about today for the top 8 finals, but at the same time, this is also the last Vanguard tournament that we have for BRO this season, so that also means it's coming to an end, which is also a bit of a sad news. But we're gonna come out flying, and we're gonna finish up with a bang for Vanguard, because this top 8 is bound to be explosive.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, even if this is the last Vanguard BRO, there is still BCS season up around the corner. The dates were announced just a few days ago for most of Europe and a few extra ones in Canada. And there's more to come, so make sure to keep an eye on the Bushiroad website for more information, plan your travels, and hopefully we will see you later this year in person. But until we move on to the top 8, we have a few more things to get through today. So, JJ, why don't you walk us through today's schedule?
Alright, so for today's format, we'll be discussing what are the rules, regulations, and things you need to keep in mind. So on the Saturday, we were able to take a look at the first rounds of Swiss best of 1, 30 minutes. Now we are in top 8 actually. It is 35 minutes, and I have a little bit of extra leeway going into this as part of the regulations. Only English cards are allowed, and you're not allowed to use any of the pre-release product if they're released in the weekend of the BRO. So sadly enough, no playing with any future cards here. You can only play with what's legal. So.
Yep. Also worth mentioning for top 8, in the top cut, we changed the time rule slightly so that double loss no longer happens. If the players reach into overtime, it is now sudden death at the end of damage comparison. So, just make sure that, there has to be a winner in top 4.
That's right. So let's actually also take a look at the schedules for the upcoming events that are still to come.
For sure, and as you can see, we mentioned that this is the last Vanguard VRO, which is a little bit sad. It's the end of the Vanguard season for now, as it were, at least until DPTO 6 comes out. But next week, BRO itself isn't over yet. We have one last week, one last tournament, which is going to be Weiss Schwarz. And again, unfortunately, my boys Eric and JJ will not be joining me for that, but we'll have some nice guys in the form of Leon and Nando rejoining me from the last BRO. So if you're interested in Weiss, you never played before, or you have been playing for a while and you're interested in taking a look, hopefully we'll see you then. I know a lot of my friends in NA and AO have picked up Weiss in the last few weeks looking forward to BRO, so maybe we'll see them as well. But yeah, that's going to be on the 20th and 21st of August, the same time as this, 10 AM CET. Hopefully we'll see you there. But looking back for just today, we are in the top 8. We do have all the marbles to play for. Eric, walk us through the prizes.
And prizes we have indeed. We already discussed them yesterday, but let's refresh our memory a little bit, because we're playing not only for certificates, upcoming booster boxes, but also a special victory promo card, which this time for the standard format is none other than Trick Moon. So any Basraga or Dragon Empire mains out there, they probably want to cop some copies of these bad boys. But if we go over the specific prizes, we can see if you manage to get 4th place, you will get a nice certificate with potentially your name on it, which can be nice to frame on your wall, to flex on your co-workers or maybe your family members. So that's definitely a prize to have. But once we move up, we see for 3rd place, we not only get a certificate, we get a booster box of the upcoming set for standard, as well as 1 copy of the Trick Moon promo victory card. Now moving up to 2nd place, we get the same prizes, but instead of 1 promo, you get 2 victory promo cards, which is really nice. But the main bag is here for becoming the grand champion of BRO Standard, which not only cap you a certificate, a booster box, but a whole 4 copies, an entire playset of the victory promo card for Trick Moon. So very nice prizes to behold, and these are really some nice goodies for these players to fight for in the upcoming matches that we're going to see on stream. But That said, that's what we have for the general information. I think it's time to take a look at our gladiators, our contestants for what we're gonna see today. So let's bring it back and talk about the top 8 and the bracket that we have for today.
Yep, for sure. Just a quick mention of the prizes there. It's worth mentioning that 2 of these players in the top 8 are playing Bafsagara, so I can imagine that they will definitely enjoy that Trick Moon promo. But JJ, why don't you walk us through these players and the matches we'll be looking at?
Alrighty then, so we do have Karan Patel versus Nils. Nils being actually allowed into the top 8 instead of Mushrak, since fortunately or unfortunately for us, Mushrak is not going to be able to attend for today, since he'll be taking part in the shop challenges and shop tournaments and qualifiers to hopefully obtain his buy card that he can use at one of the recent BCSs that are going to be coming up soon. So good luck to him, and good luck to the competitors he's be playing against. They're in for a tough one. We have Zefi versus Duex Machina, Bavsagra player that we did see in one of the last rounds make it into top 8, so congratulations to them. WCC Kai, our co-caster at one of the BCS events, at BRO events, also make it in the top cut, playing spicy lists himself too as well, so I'm really happy to see that. Then we have Ramon Car TCG versus him. Then we have Atagak versus Man Long.
That's right, our previous champions, a lot of well-known players here. I think only 1 or 2 of these names are new to top cuts in BRO, so it just goes to show you that, standard, there is still, player skill and expression does make all the difference here. But just to quickly run through the deck, so Karan Patel is on Degreya, playing against Nils, who's on Greedon, who we saw on stream yesterday as well. Zefi is on Flagberg, going up against Desu Ex Machina on Bafsagara. Kai is on Prison, up against Roman Cardfight, who's also on Bafsagara. And finally, Otaka G is also on Prison, up against Manlong on Bruce. So a pretty diverse top 8, I think, like a few 2-ofs, but a little bit of everything, which is nice to see. Again, I'll reiterate what I said yesterday. Surprisingly, no Gravidia, considering how many of them did well in AO and in NA. But, they're still all to play for. But before too long, let's just get into the deck list so you can see exactly what the players are playing. I think we're going to start off with Zefi's Flagberg list. Now, we talked about this yesterday, like, Flagberg was one of those decks that people were like, I don't think this is very good, but, people kept persevering, people kept trying new things, and eventually they made it work. Of course, adding the likes of Inlet Pulse changed absolutely everything, which, as we can see, Zefi's playing 4 copies of. But one of the things I want to draw attention to is the ride line, because there's so much flexibility in Stoicaea. Do you play the Zorga ride line? Do you play the Loroa ride line? But here, Zefi's chosen to go straight with the Flagberg ride line itself, playing Inroad Shooter and Ascendance Assault, which I personally am a big fan of, because it gives you so much early aggro, and it lets you pass to the board really effectively, which I think is what this deck really needs. You want to push your opponents like 3 or 4 damage by grade 3, so that the pressure from Flagberg really mounts up. But yeah, beyond that, it's pretty straightforward. What do you guys think?
I really do like it as well. I feel that one of the biggest caveats that Flagberg really had at the beginning is the fact that it just didn't have like the 4th attack clincher, or that you would have to play like a bunch of ineffective cards that you would need to draw these specific pieces that would force you to use more resources. And I really like some of the new additions, especially within the Pulse being in a deck now allows you to draw a card, it gets extra soul, pressure your opponent on Persona Ride, swinging for 23 twice is nothing to sneeze at.
Yep, for sure. And moving on to their opponent's deck, they will be playing against Desu Ex Machina, who we saw earlier on stream playing Bafsagara. Now, we talked about this list on stream. It's pretty solid. There's a lot of specifically arms and Bafsagara support. But beyond that, Bafsagara, despite being a 3-attack deck, it actually accrues a lot of advantage and a lot of pressure out of nowhere. Eric, why don't you talk us through some of these choices?
So we've seen this deck a little bit in action, and it's an interesting deck that does have a unique choice of going for the pure consistency of making the double weapon on turn 3 be available. And overall, we know that Basraga is relatively cookie-cutter built with what they want to do and which cards you should use, because the Basraga deck doesn't have a lot of options just yet. More support is coming on the horizon to make things more flexible and interesting. But overall, it's just a good stuff deck that allows you to do your things as consistently as possible, get to your trick moons as fast as possible, and just have a Basraga with double crit pressure on turn 3 and just go ham as much as possible. Now, the interesting thing though is that she does play a split with the heals where they do have the double crit heal, and so far in the tournament we've seen this heal actually pulling a lot of weight. They've been using their skills consistently because a lot of Vanguards have the extra crit pressure or Rhaegars with crit pressure, and this could definitely come up in the top 8 as well, and I'm curious how much that will dictate in the upcoming fight for her in this top 8 match. But overall, I think it's a solid list, and we can assume the same thing will happen for what we saw in the last round of Swiss as well, happening in top 8.
Yep, for sure. And then moving on to the next player, we've got Kai, WCC's frontman in a way. He's playing a Prison. So here you can see, I think it's a mostly standard Prison list. The only thing I want to draw attention to here is he is putting back in the Perio Turquoise, some of these older cards. Like, he's cut down Aggro Rouge to 2 to play Perio Turquoise and the Violet, whose full name I don't quite remember. And he's not playing Taser Lage. He's not playing the grade 2 that puts Guardians into Prison. So he's going a lot more traditionalist style of more board control. Because as we've seen here, the 2 times we had Prison on stream yesterday, the way to play around Prison is to keep the Prison low, keep your board and soul low, so that they can't get value out of their Pure Light turns. And what he's saying is that, okay, I see that you're going to do that to counterplay me, so I'm going to go all in on the Perio Turquoise and the Cheval Stud and this other grade 2 which gives him resources, just to say well, if you're going to deny me playing, I'm just going to try and aggro you back, and I really like what he's done here.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this particular list from the other Prison lists we've seen so far, this is a lot more defensive, because not only Turquoise and Derry, but we also see the grade 1 Riot Beeble for an additional shield value in the deck. So where the previous list we saw perform was very focused on being aggressive and getting that count in the Prison as high as possible, this feels a more stally, where Kai wants to survive long enough where the Prison and the Seraph's Pure Light skill is gonna matter, because he can comfortably guard most of these strong attacks in this format.
Yep, for sure. And then let's take a look at his opponent, which is Roman Cardfight. One of the more well-known French players, I'd say, who's also on Basagura. So, JJ, why don't you tell us about the difference between this list and Deus Ex Machina's list?
With this list that Roman is currently playing, he is playing Twin Bullet of Duststorm Travis, one of the cards that a lot of other Bavsagra lists had ended up replacing and completely moving out of them. And I kind of like that he's incorporated it into his, so it allows him to kind of trim down the board a little bit while also getting some good aggression in, because swinging for plus 10k, getting a soul charge, which also facilitates your Bavsagra skill, and also being able to hit over some defensive triggers with a good booster, especially Bavsagra skill going off, is really nice indeed. I like it a whole lot. And the addition of front triggers as well gives them an option of having something as a 20k shield if they're not drawing into any of their other arms that he can use, like the sword, for example.
For sure, for sure. What do you think about him not playing the grade 3 that arms from the drop zone?
I think they're trying to go for like a leaner list, it would seem. They're trying to go for, well, if I just draw into Spare, my game plan is settled, which does make me a little bit nervous that they're replacing Travis for the grade 3. I would expect them to probably like replace the Aoshinya for Travis instead, but I do like their approach to it nonetheless. I think it should still be fine. If they at least draw one weapon, it should still be okay.
Alright, we'll see how it gets on. So moving on to the next game of the top 8, we have Otaka G also playing Prison. And again, this is a list that we saw on stream yesterday, and like Eric said, this is a much more aggressive list. He's playing the Bagu motor, he's playing the countercharge soul charge engine. He's not trying to stall into Pure Light as much, he's just trying to rush Prison and overwhelm the opponent.
And I think it's gonna probably do the same thing in this top 8 match. I'm curious how he will perform in this top 8, because we saw him struggling a bit against Tegria with the fight against Musrex, because we saw that Tegria has a good matchup against his deck to clear the board, clear the soul, and make Pure Light not as valuable as much. But we have to wait and see how this is gonna pan out right now, because the matchup he's gonna have, it doesn't necessarily be as problematic because he's coming up against Bruce. And Bruce is a different story because they cannot clear as easily the board. They can clear the board a bit, but it's a bit harder for Bruce to clear the entire board as well as the soul. They usually tend to leave 1 or 2 soul to prep for next turn because of Bruce's ends their turn on an empty soul. That's a lot harder to then regain to 5 soul the next following turn. So it's an interesting thing to see how this deck will perform in this top 8 and if we're gonna see it move along, and then we can see if it might have potentially a rematch against Takuya and then see how they perform in that particular matchup.
Yep, so speaking of Bruce, let's take a look at Man Long's Bruce list. And Bruce is an interesting one because, as I mentioned yesterday, there are so many different ways to build Bruce. Do you play for the Persona Ride package? Do you play for grade 4? Do you play aggro pieces, etc, etc? And then we had one Bruce on stream yesterday, and Man Long's list is completely different. He's all in on Marjorie, he's all in on Derek, he's all in on the Gear Dog. Like, JJ, why don't you walk us through this list and how it differs to maybe other Bruce lists we may have seen?
Okay, so one thing for sure to note, he is running Derricks. A lot of the other lists never ran any of the Derricks. None of the lists ran any of the Lyles. And it also didn't run any Wades either, which is the other grade 1 as well, which he is focusing, and Dobers, of course, he is focusing on just getting a whole bunch of front power into his board, just everything into the front row, and everything is just pushing a whole bunch of aggression. So when he goes into his grade 4 turn, he's not using any swirlers, he doesn't care about any of that, he doesn't really care much about his boosters whatsoever. He just wants to make sure that his opponent has to guard everything as much as possible, and especially with running with Hellblast full dive, it gives him another outlet of being able to give power to his front row, which I think is like very threatening. Because like he's not running any Edens and nothing like that either to get extra crit pressure. He's like, okay, I only care about my front row dealing damage, and I only care about the restand. I need to hit over 40k from my rear guards, and that's all I care about, which is just a really easy line of play to go through.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we haven't seen a lot of before, like no Brian's, 4 Marjorie, like 4 full dive, no tactics. I think this is really innovative deck building, and I think like saying, he's like sort of playing around. I just want my front row to go off, like I'm just gonna go like all in, maybe like even trying to compensate for the quote-unquote weakness of Bruce being that you need to find the grade 4. Maybe he's saying, I don't need to hit grade 4 because even without the grade 4 my front row is going to be threatening and I'm just going to go for it. So I'm really looking forward to see him if he makes it through to top 4. But moving on to our actual stream game, we've got Karan versus Nils, and we're going to start off by looking at Karan's Thagrea list. So this is slightly different to Muzrax's list that we saw on stream yesterday, but a lot of very similar cards. So as we mentioned, the Thagrea versus Prison matchup is very, very favored because you have Painkiller Angels, you've got Maples, you've got ways of keeping the soul and the board clear. And in fact, I think Karan's list is almost the same as Dave's. The only difference that instead of the Refurzos, he's playing this other grade 3 whose name I don't immediately recognize.
Yeah, Felicita, I believe?
That's the one. So her effect is, if you Persona Road, you can counter blast 2 and retire herself to give your Vanguard a drive, which is very cool. Again, like just like with Refurzos, it's all about Persona Ride, which the Thagrea pretty much guarantees every single turn with its Persona Cross Riding. But instead of being a boost, it instead gives your Vanguard incredible pressure, which synergizes very nicely with the Dark Thagrea's restand. The only thing last thing I want to talk about here is again that he's playing the Light Thagrea in his ride deck and his main decking his Dark Thagrea, which is I think a very interesting decision because you can kind of go both ways, right? What do you guys make of this?
I agree with you because we were talking a little bit about it yesterday as well. We were very surprised that Dave's list was also like this. I think it might be just like a reoccurring trend, but I do love it in comparison that you also have the Felicita, which does give the Dark Thagrea extra drive check, so you hit 3 on first and then 2 on the second, drawing you 5 cards in net value of a plus. It's really intense. And other thing I do want to talk about too, he's also running 4 copies of the new heal triggers from from DPTO5, which allows him to play against archetypes that have a bunch of multi-attacks. So I guess it's a nod against archetypes like Bruce that just like have a whole bunch of multi-attacks and he just only cares about that going forward. So it's helped him so far. He's made it to top 8 and I can't wait to see how this one turns out.
Yep, for sure. And let's take a flip over and take a look at his opponent, which is Nils playing Greedon. So again, we saw this list on stream yesterday, and it was Greedon's one of those decks that if you had told me was going to make top 8 of VRO. I would have been a little bit skeptical, I think it's fair to say, but Nils showing that the deck still has a lot of pressure, can steal wins out of nowhere, and he's done very, very well to get to this point. And like I said yesterday, they've printed a lot of cards that have the word greed on in its text box. Some of them have to be good eventually, and here we see 4 copies of Jito, 4 copies of Dofund, these really powerful cards that just get going and just end up kind of counteracting Greedon's neg, as it were, right?
Yeah, that's right, because it's just been one of the biggest issues with Greedon is that you tend to never hit the 10 card threshold, or you tend to have too little bit of Desired Devil targets in your hand, in your soul, or in your drop to make it work. And with the copies of Zito that they're running at 4 of, and also some copies of Kennen, like sure, you could probably hit some triggers off the top, which we did see in the feature matches of yesterday. I still feel there are more moments than not. You still want to run the cards like Mocha, like Kennen. You still want to get those resources, especially going, and you have access to Babetsu as much as you possibly can, which is fantastic.
Yep, for sure. It's going to be a very interesting matchup of Segreya versus Greedon in the first round top 8, but I think the players are just about setting up, so let's head over to the game. Alright, so here we have Karan Patel from the US on the left, and Niels from Sweden on the right. Now, at a base glance, from the first initial perspective, who would you say has the advantage here, do you think?
I would personally think that Tegria might have the advantage here because Greedon feels a bit more that it needs to high roll in the sense that it needs specific key pieces to make it use. If Greedon sees the pieces right on turn 3 and they can just unload, Greedon is in a very good position. But if we're talking pure about the average of a deck performing, I feel like Tegria is a bit more stable than Greedon. So I think they are in a good position, especially now that we see that the Tegria player is going first. So Karan Patel is already setting up for his Persona right turn the moment that Niels goes into his Greedon turn. So that's pretty good.
I would have to agree with
it looks like
it.
Niels went first here, because Tegria's getting the first attack. So, and it's very interesting because Greedon doesn't need grade 4 Persona or anything, it just needs to ride up and go off. Whereas Tegria really wants to be cross-Persona riding to get its full value. So I think the question is here, when Nils reaches grade 3, Karan's only going to be on grade 2, so he's going to need to survive this first Greedon swing on grade 2, and then survive another Greedon turn on his light Tegria before cross-riding onto the dark Tegria to actually start going off.
And as you stated, his exact theory here, looks like there Inken is going to be connecting here to the face, going to be discarding Painkiller Agent to guard here with this, going in with Zito, getting seems to be a critical, it looks like.
Yep, one Dark Tegria goes out of the deck. I really like what Niels has done here, getting on this early aggro, because as I just mentioned, he knows that Tegria isn't really going to be threatening until turn 4. So he has all the time in the world he needs to drop pieces down, rush Karan up to a high amount of damage, to the point where the Greedon restand becomes mega threatening.
Oh, getting a Maple here on the board at rest. Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, Maple is one of the key cards of Tegria. We can see here, if nothing else, it's going to be at least a 5k shield that Karan can use to stabilize in the early game, which is going to make a huge difference. Niels taking a bunch of damage there as well, getting crit back, no problems. Greedon, as we know, Greedon dies on 7, not 6, so as not only does Niels have the advantage in terms of tempo and rushing, but he also has a bit of more lifeline than Karan does.
Yeah, he has a lot more turns to kind of do what he needs to, or get his pieces together.
But I feel like if he starts, rushing the Tegria player feels a good position because Tegria is a bit slower as soon as he goes first. But knowing that Karan Patel is playing the Felicidia, giving him too much open counterblasts at one go, that could be dangerous if he can immediately use those counterblasts, because he can get like a triple drive, twin drive, that could be very devastating. But if he high rolls and he gets 2 copies of the Felicidia and he has 5 counterblasts, and that could be 4 drive check and then triple drive if he wants to go all out in that turn. So it can be dangerous giving him so much counterblast to work with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe Niels is just saying, I'm just going to try and risk that high roll and just try and win the game before that comes down. I mean, he's got 2 counterblasts for the Incane on board, so anything could happen here, really. Even though it's early games, there's still all to play for. So he's just resolving his various skills. He's gonna make a board. Bishoku comes down, giving his Vanguard more power. Dauphin comes down as well, which, if he can make a 4th body, can be a crit rearguard. It's gonna soul charge to get him up to, I think, 6 soul, which is gonna put him on 10 after the Greedon skill. So he's gonna get the plus 5k in drive from Incane, plus 15 from Greedon effect, plus 10 from the Bishokus in soul. So, you know, like, this is what we were saying, like, Karan's only on a 10k Vanguard, he only has a 5k intercept on the board. This is a huge, oh, is that a double Incane?
I think it is. That could be a big turn here.
So he's going to be unable to pay the cost of both, because each one is counterblast 2. So he's just getting, I'm going to give up the drive of the other one, just so I can leave the Dauphin on the board and have another body to still pressure you with.
Especially since he could just pass off all the triggers to it. And it's over the trigger!
Oh my god! That's huge!
And on a Greedon turn like this too, this is a double swing. Does he give all to Vanguard or does he give it to Rearguard, you guys think?
I would so.
all Vanguard
Yeah.
here. 100 mil, force a PG, for sure. That is definitely the way to play this, I think.
I think there's another Greedon for next turn as well.
Yeah, so he has the Persona right on top. Karan getting a very well-timed heal, but that's still 2 damage coming in. And 1 defensive is nice, but that is now a really fat Greedon, who is going to restand with +1 drive. So if I was in Karan's shoes, I would still have to PG the second Greedon, otherwise I'm going to risk my opponent drive checking a crit with his now triple drive, and I might lose the game.
Interesting enough, he chose to Soul Blast the Goshoku, which means he's gonna lose a bit of power on his rearguard here.
Oh, but that's fine. You can just use the skill of
yeah,
Zefi to
okay,
right?
okay, that makes sense. You're gonna immediately put it back. Okay.
So there's the counterblast 2 from the Incane, and now this is gigantic 2 crit triple drive. I think the only thing he was missing here is Nils isn't playing any more main deck copies of Go-Man, so there's no guard restrict. So Karan does have the PG, as we can see. Triple drive is all blank, so Karan would have survived, but that is still a very risky position to be in. And then yeah, the 13k Dauphin just gets intercepted, and Maple can come back when Karan rides grade 3, and so he's not in danger yet, but the problem is that again, this grade 3 turn isn't doing that much. It's making a board, it's restanding 1 rearguard maybe, and he still has to deal with this 23k base 2 crit Greedon next turn as well.
And it could possibly increase its own power because Bushoku skill ends up triggering when you have when you're on 4 or more damage. That could just increase to even more threshold, especially if he ends up finding more Bushokus.
Exactly. It's definitely an uphill battle for Karan here, but again, he won the BRO Premium last time, and he's made top 8 of a variety of number of other BROs this season. So if player skill is something that matters, as we said, then I wouldn't count him out of the race just yet.
That's right.
We'll see how he can maneuver this turn, because as we know, not having the Dark Degree in Soul means that he doesn't get a full board. He doesn't get to make a board out of nowhere. So he's only going to be able to call 1 instead of 2 units, because he doesn't have Drilling Angel to put Dark Degrees into the Soul. So we'll see what he can find. And he does still at least have some gameplay with the Light Degrees, end of battle. You can maybe find some triggers. He's playing front, so the front row can still do something, but this is just a 3 attack deck. He needs to find Painkiller Angels to be able to farm a hand to do anything with. There's the Drilling Angel. A little bit too late. It would have been nice to have it before he uses the Grea's Act skill, but it is still going to find him 5k shield, which is nice.
That's right. Sadly enough, he did end up losing a bit of Painkiller Angels in the early game so that he can try a guard against Niels' onslaught and pressure that he could done. But it's been tough. I do feel that Karan is not out of it for sure. We'll just have to see how he approaches his turn, if he can find any more boosters for his back row.
Yeah, I would even argue that even if he did have the the cross persona right this turn, there's an argument to not even restanding the board, because those units are what, 10, 15k maybe? Discarding a card which is potentially 5k shield, which you might need to survive the Greedon, just to get that little bit of extra damage in when your opponent's definitely not at risk of dying, is definitely a little bit risky in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like Karen Patel really needs to conserve his resources because he knows he's up against at least 2 Vanguard swings with decent numbers and double crit pressure every single turn. So the game suddenly changed completely for him, and he needs to account that every single time, because there's also a possibility if Niels finds his pieces that Greedon can swing twice.
And talking about pieces, Karan using Drilling Angel to try to find a PG off the top. Sadly enough, it whiffed. He couldn't find anything, but doesn't mean the turn is over yet. See if he's going to do anything here. Looks like he'll just do a bear swing for 13 to face. Or is it going to go into rear? Let's see what he's thinking.
I would consider just going into rear here. Like, giving your opponent more damage is uses of Mucker, uses of Kennen, uses of Dofun that you really don't want to be risking. Front trigger comes in, crit as well. This might convince him to go at face with his rears now. But I think he went at Vanguard with this attack. Interesting. Defensive coming in for Niels. Draw is really nice. So it means that this the Drilling Angel will have to go into the rear guard, which is still not awful. You know, it's one more card that Niels has to drop from hand to restand at least.
Let's see. Niels is probably contemplating whether or not he wants to guard this, because it is a rear guard he probably wants to try to keep around, because it can itself can pressure the Vanguard if he wants to.
Yeah, but he does let the Dauphin die, which maybe tells me he wants to hold on to pieces in hand. And then the Maple's going to go in. Niels is going to take the damage, go to 4, get a defensive that doesn't quite matter here. And then Karan's going to use the Greyer to recycle his pieces.
Oh, wow. I love that interaction, actually. Using the Drilling Angel, put the PG in to try to search for one, and then also using Maple to just get another one back into hand. It's actually pretty nice.
I think he actually added the one he put into... He soul blasted the PG that he put into Soul Drilling Angel and then just added it straight away, because Maple doesn't have to add the same card.
No, that's what I meant. I found it's like a very cool interaction. Sorry.
Yeah, like, you wouldn't expect Keta Sanctuary of all decks to have reliable waiting room access, but here we are, and you know, that PG is definitely gonna pay dividends as he moves through this turn. So Niels making a board there. Down comes another Dauphin, and what looks like, is that a Muku?
No, that's a Bubetsu in the back row. That could be a big one to replenish the board for more attacks here.
So he's got 3 Bushokus in the soul, and as you mentioned, that Bubetsu in the back row is going to give Niels the ability to attack 4 times, 2 rear guards, 2 Vanguard swings. Karan's only on 3, so he can probably afford to take the rear guard swings, but guarding these Vanguard swings, which is still 23k, 33 with Persona Ride, is still going to be quite a big ask, I think. And given that there's no more Incane on the board, I would be tempted to just take the first one. Maybe if you get hit with a crit, go to 5, get some defenses, maybe that turns off the rear attacks.
I think the Vanguard swings are actually a lot higher because of the Boshoku in Souls as well. Because it's plus 10 of the trigger, plus 10 of Persona Ride, and then plus 10 or 15 of the Bushokus.
Right, yeah. So heal coming in for Niels. That's going to push Vanguard even higher up. So Karan does PG here. It just means that any more crits that come out make every other attack, forced to guard.
I mean, he just drove check another crit, so that doesn't help.
And we saw Alta Vanguard despite the PG, so this is definitely going to be, 23, 33, 48, 58, 68k? No. 83 after the 15 from Greedon, so that's going to be a massive Vanguard swing coming in.
Okay, so I think he actually gave the critical power to the rear Dauphin, and that also gets a crit on its own too as well. So if he ends up getting a critical trigger here again, that Dauphin could possibly be lethal, because it'll be like over 30 extra power.
Right, since the Vanguard is already lethal with 3 crit from the overtrigger effect. Good call. But yeah, he's going to resolve the Greedon there, gets the plus 15, so since he gave all the trigger power to the Dauphin, that Greedon is on 23, 33, 48, 53. Then resolving the Bubetsu there to make another attack, it looks like. Or not.
Okay. Looks like he's currently contemplating how he wants to resolve some of these skills here. Since he has 4 Bushoku now in the soul, that's plus 20. Sheesh! Plus 10 from Overtrigger, plus 15, because I think he has over 10. Yeah, I think you're right. That's upwards to the 60k threshold. It's kind of crazy.
That's a big read on.
And it's 3 damage, which is very lethal. And Karan's already burned 1 PG. Does he have a second? And this is still 2 drive. He does have the second PG. Very fortunate there. But a crit onto this. There it is.
Crit.
There you go.
A crit on the Bubet on the Dauphin could end this all. So that is what now, a 43k 3 damage if he counterblasts 1 on the Dauphin. Yikes! Yikes!
Oh, actually, I think it might be even higher. I see four circles there. I think it might be 40k already by itself, and it gets no extra power.
Oh, he's taking it.
He's taking the. Oh, Neil's chosen. Oh, he doesn't have 2 Greedons in the soul to counterblast for it, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right, okay. So Karan, they're getting, I'd say, kind of lucky that Nil's assault charges were a little bit dud. That he gets to survive 1 more turn.
But I do see a very concerning note here, because the last PG just went to the damage zone for Karan Patel.
Right. So he kind of has to win this turn, right?
Yeah, because there's no way he can guard this next turn against 2 Greedons that will potentially swing around the 60 to 70k mark.
It's gonna be tough here, but it does look like he finds the grade 3. So this is the turn here. This is the pop-off turn here. He is gonna be playing the Heavenly Shield of Encompassment for Lisada. Gonna counterblast to retire her since was able to persona right this turn. Doesn't get an additional drive check. And then with Mabel.
Can he?
Yeah, this is the combo he's looking for. Like, this is where he's gonna try and push the game. But again, Nils does have persona right. He does have a Greedon on his soul, so Nils is gonna lose on 7 damage, not 6. And he does have what looks to be quite a fairly chunky hand. Karan doesn't have any more aggro other than his 2 bodies on the board. First PG coming down for Nils. Triple drive, blank. Oh, 3 blanks is not what you want in this situation at all.
That is tough. This is going to discard a card here. It's not really much of a detriment since he still gets a twin drive, so he kind of pays itself back.
The other issue as well is that Karan only has a persona right going for him. Both of his rear guards are only 20k. If he doesn't hit like a front or some other form like an over trigger, these 1 defensive from Nils can turn off this entire turn.
I don't even think that a front is going to be enough, because he needs to deal 3 damage, and so far nothing comes with a crit that's on the board. So he's going to need a lot in this twin drive to make this turn matter.
I feel like overtrigger is a possibility, to be honest. I feel like an overtrigger and then the rear guards themselves also getting either your extra crits or the extra heals do probably help here a bit, I feel.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that he should have quite a few triggers left in the deck, given how many non-triggers we've seen so far. Nils is going to drop his second PG. Come on, Karan. What have you got for us?
That's
1 crit. That's a good start. All onto the maple. And a blank. So this 20k Drilling Angel is... I'd be tempted to whack into the Dauphin here because you just want... you want to force Nils to drop his hand, right?
I agree.
This is only 10k shield. Yeah, 20k into the Dauphin. Nils lets it go. And now you've got a 30k maple. Do you swing into Vanguard and risk your opponent having more counterblast to play with, or do you just go... I think you have to, right?
I think you would, because the opponent is only playing 2 Bubetsus that are really the scary cards, and 1 is already gone. So there's only 1 potential extender here they have access to. So they cannot really capitalize too much on the open counterblast after this point.
Yeah, and we also saw that Nils used 2 Incane on his first grade 3 turn. So, right now he does have full counterblast, so he is at risk of getting 4 drives from the other 2 Incane, but maybe that's a risk that Karan's willing to take. There's the other persona right. Nils now has 2 Greedons in soul. Can he find another Dauphin for the crit?
I think one of the other scarier things here as well is the fact that Karan put him on 6, right? Oh, and he found Incane.
There's 1 Incane.
So Karan put him on 6. So the chance of Karan healing here is going to be very dependent on him either hitting the OT into...
No, he cannot heal anymore. It's just OT.
Yeah.
Yeah, either Nils has to heal or Karan has to hit OT here.
So Karan needs to guard the Vanguard attacks and need to take one of the 1 damage rear guards.
Yeah, because the Vanguard has a crit from the OT effect. That's this is suddenly starting to look very dicey.
Oh, and one thing to take note too as well is that when you're playing a Dark States archetype, in general, deck out is a possibility, and Niels' deck is looking really scarily low right now. I think he has like maybe 10 cards left, maybe 7.
Yeah, all of the soul going in and getting the extra drop lane. You have to remember, Greedon's taking like 5 cards out of your deck a turn between Persona Ride and your drive checks. So we'll see how it goes. So he's gonna swing in here with the over trigger effects. So that's 33 plus the Bashokus makes it 53. This is 53 2 crit on the first attack of the turn is still pretty concerning.
Yeah. So I think Karan is asking for a trigger count. So we did see a plethora of triggers in the mid game so far. So we would probably still have to see a couple more. Maybe like 3 or 4 more still left in deck, I think.
Yeah, not a lot, I would assume, because we saw him drive check a bunch, we saw him discard a lot. There are 2 he just called onto the board. There's some in the damage zone as well.
Mm-hmm. And plus, like, one of them would have to be a heal if Karan has any chance of surviving this. And I think we've seen at least 2 heals come out already. And I think we've seen like a fair number of heals come out for Karan as well. So his chance of like double healing out of this is still super low as well. So he doesn't have any more PGs either, so what's he going to do here?
So I think he probably might try to go for like a 1 to pass, possibly. I think that might be something he might have been contemplating.
I think that's all he can do, yeah. We'll see how this goes. He's just double checking. So 53k, so you need to get to 58, which is 45k shield to get to a 2 pass. That's 20.
33, 48, 58, 1 to pass.
Yep, there's the intercepts to make it 58. So that is indeed 1 to pass. Oh, Karan, you are playing with fire here, my friend.
I think you have to do this in this situation. There's a PG.
Blank. Crit.
That's
yeah.
The heal does come in, but he heal doesn't go off.
He can't heal.
He can't heal.
You can't heal. It's GG. It's game. That's the power of Greedon.
Oh. Yeah, it just goes to show you, like the insane pressure from multiple Vanguard restands. Each game, 20, 15 to 20k a time. It's just, you're basically telling your opponent, like, find PGs, or that's it. And Karan did find a lot of PGs, but he couldn't find enough. And, it's exactly like I predicted, right? Going second, you're on grade 2, have to deal with 1 greed on turn. Ride grade 3, don't do a lot, have to deal with another greed on turn. Like, he's already up against the ropes. And I think the early aggressive OT from Niels there was just, the nails in the coffin.
Yeah, I think.
Or should I say the nails in the coffin?
Ben, I'm the one that makes these scrappy jokes, okay?
I'm in pain, guys. I'm in pain. But you're right there. Basically, it seems to be like I didn't think it would have been that bad of a matchup, even without the OT. I didn't think it would have gone that, that abysmally. I just feel like the OT just hastened the situation. Just kind of like put a little bit more urgency into it, which is just it's kind of how to cook your crumble sometimes. I guess what probably you could do in the aspects of that matchup then is that you try to go low to the ground as well and try to go fast too into them, so that they need to keep on scrounging for pieces too, and try to ignore your Thiegra line for a bit until you want to actually go off, which he did set up for, but he might have kept on to too much pieces and not call enough to the board, maybe, or maybe you just couldn't. Sometimes your hands could be like that.
Yeah, and we saw there the light to grey and the right deck. I don't want to say the only advantage, but to me the main advantage of right deck light to grey is that on turn 3 you can counterblast 1 to make a board. It is a +1 on ride, but as we saw, the +1, Karan only managed to find a 5k shield out of it. Maple then turned to a PG, which is nice, but it wasn't like it wasn't like the +2, +3 we see from the likes of Prison or Bruce or Gravidia, and I think that's what really held him back. We saw that he even damaged his PG. So if he managed to maybe draw 1 more card, or get that drive check a little bit earlier, he could have had that extra PG he needed to survive.
And you're right about that one, and because also during the early game, because of Niels' aggression, he had to discard a whole lot of painkillers or discard it for the ride deck. He couldn't commit any of them. He couldn't use any of them as boosters either. So his hand probably was shaped around a certain game plan, and Niels was like, yeah, your game plan doesn't really...
It's not in my game plan.
Exactly.
But I'm honestly very surprised, because this, for me personally, I don't know if you guys experienced this first, but this is the first time the greed on 6 damage actually mattered here. I've never seen this.
Yeah, so that's what I was asking too at the end. Like, I didn't, like, sure, you want to deal the damage, but I feel like in this situation, your only outs are heal triggers and OT. I kind of feel you kind of just want to try heal here, right?
Yeah, but I think... Karen Patel might have the same situation that I was when commentating this. I completely forgot that aspect. I was like, oh yeah, wait, it's a 6 damage. You cannot heal.
Yeah, you kind of get the red message. You just want to deal damage, and you're trying like, okay, like it's getting me a little bit closer to victory. I just need to last that one time. It's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, because a crit is very tempting, right? Like you hit the crit, you're like, oh yes, 2 damage, just one more to kill them. Nah, sometimes it's you kind of want to take a step back and look at it and see what some of your outs are. Like, one of your other outs are just healing or having enough resources to make it a 1 to pass. It's the crit, you get the heal, you maybe live because still a crit on it because of the OT, and maybe hope that the second one is a OT, and then you survive yourself and you build the board, you can try push from there. But alas.
A little quite close, but no dice in the end. So we're going to cut to a very quick break while we set up the next round of top 4. So join us after a quick short, reprise to see who is in the top 4 cut. See you very soon. Welcome back to the EU BRO 2022 Standard Tournament. We are partway through the top 8 of the day 2 cut, and man, what a start to the day. That was a game and a half. I think you guys will both agree.
I definitely will. I think the energy was just like kind of up there already from the beginning. Just both of them going tit for tat the whole entire way. And then when that OT got hit, it just kind of started careening straight down the hill, and it just like going at full speed, full gas, no stop. It was really entertaining to watch.
Yeah, the moment the OT hit, it was basically David versus Goliath, but then with Karen Patel. So it was something.
For sure, and we have the result from the other side of the bracket as well. So let's take a quick look at the bracket. JJ, walk us through who has made it and who hasn't.
Alright, awesome people. So we have WCC Kai versus Manlong on their features in semis. They are going to be duking it out. It's going to be Prison versus Bruce. So keep your guys ready. Hopefully we'll get to see who comes out on top of that one. And we have a Niels that we just saw on feature. We're going to be taking a look at their match again versus Zefi, playing some Flagberg. We'll be watching that too as well. I'd like to thank the people who took part in the top 8 for joining us. Karan Patel, unfortunately, was not able to make it. Deus Ex Machina, not able to make it. Roman Cardfight TCG did unfortunately also not make it. And we also have Atagak not making it as well. But congratulations to you guys for making it into top 8. Hopefully we get to see you guys in another BRO.
Yep, well done and commiserations to those. But like JJ mentioned, we are going to take a look at Niels again because they are up against Zefi, who is playing Flagberg. And I think it's fair to say that we all have a bit of a soft spot in our hearts for Flagberg. So we're going to start off by breezing through Niels' deck list. We literally just saw this. Bushoku doing the business, Inkane doing the business. There's not a lot to say here. It's just, make a board, restand your Vanguard, big number, big pressure, and go from there.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out about this particular list is that, unlike most Greedon decks, is that it doesn't really extend as much in the potential triple reset, because we only see 2 Bishokus, and then the only extenders are into the 2 copies of Muka. So even though this deck is a little bit more consistent, it does have a little bit of a lower ceiling as in potential explosiveness, which might be an issue at some point during maybe this matchup, or maybe if they manage to go to the finals in a final. So that's something to look out for as well.
Alright, so let's quickly flip over to Zefi's deck list, and like I mentioned, this is Flagberg. Now, I keep saying, one of the cool things about Stoicheia is the way you can mix and match ride lines. Like, do you play heavy orders with the Zorga ride line? Do you play Allura plant tokens for early aggro, etc., etc.? And we see here that Zefi has gone for traditional in-road ascendance, the Flagberg's actual ride line. And this, I'm going to go on a bit of a... I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, because there's so much, this is a rabbit hole to go down. So, by playing only one Inroad and Ascendance in the right deck, he's going to struggle to reveal Flagberg or Inroad for Ascendance's cost for when Ascendance calls itself from Soul, which means that when he rides Flagberg, he's going to have -2 souls. He's going to have the grade 0 in Soul when he rides the Flagberg. And by playing in both Spiritual Body Condensation and the Inlet Pulse, that's a lot of Soul Blast he has in his deck. And by not playing the Carolophilis, he doesn't have much other Soul generation beyond the Prize Tridents and beyond the Clipping Dragon of Soul Revolution. So he's gone very fast and loose with his resources, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But by playing the Clipping Dragon and the Prize Tridents, he's got enough countercharge to be able to reliably spam the Ascendance Assaults and the Flagberg Dragons. So, like I said, this is like a big, deep, like, X leads to Y, leads to Z, leads to A, leads to B sort of situation, and yeah, I cannot wait to see whether or not this is going to work for him in practice.
Honestly, I think you explained it very nicely about this list. The only thing I want to bring attention to is probably the W in this equation, and that's the 2 off of the grade 1 for just extra 5k shield. That's an interesting choice. I don't know if it's gonna come up. I've never seen this card before, and I'm curious if this extra defense is gonna matter.
Yeah, we will see. I mean, Karan definitely needed all the defense he can get against Greedon, so let's jump straight into the game, and we'll see how it plays out. Alright, so Niels on the left rocking his towel playmat against Zefi on the right. We will see how it goes. And I think in this case, this is another matchup where neither player cares about the opponent being grade 3, so I'd say whoever goes first here is pretty well favored. And it looks like Niels is gonna discard first for right deck. There it is. Okay, so Zefi has to survive a Greedon turn before he can swing back. And the one advantage here that Flagberg has compared to other Stoicheia decks is that while it does need specific combo pieces in the form of Ascendance and Inlet Pulses and Prize Tridents to reach its full efficiency, it has a much easier way of finding those pieces compared to the likes of Zorga, who just has to naturally find its Skull Dragons, or Magnolia, who naturally has to find its Leopolds. So Zefi is gonna get the first attack in. Niels is not going to counter with any aggro, but instead damages a Flagberg. That's going to be interesting. So both players damaging very critical cards here. Flagberg for Zefi and a Bubetsu for Niels.
Oh, that might be very important that one Bubetsu's already out, because we only have 2. There's only 1 extra extender left for his deck here.
So Zefi choosing to actually call out the inroads. He's actually going to have 0 soul when he rides the Flagberg. Crit coming in. Niels, no guards, takes 2, gets a defensive. 2 defensives, does turn off the inroad attack, thankfully. But he's definitely on the back foot going into this Flagberg turn. Unless he can blind Soul Charge agreed on this turn, he's going to be at a lot of risk going into Flagberg's 5 attacks.
So let's see here. Like, one of the plays that he possibly could go for here is maybe if he has the Persona Ride and if he feels a little cheeky about it, he can call it down to the board as a rear guard and soul charge that, so then he doesn't end up like accidentally, incidentally dying to, any straight crit triggers or over trigger, for example, or maybe multi attacks that he doesn't get any defensive for without any shield value. Because him restarting twice does not guarantee him getting any shield value at all. So this is an approach that he could possibly go for.
Yeah, definitely.
I would agree with that play. I think he needs to increase his defensive as fast as possible, because this Flagberg deck plays a lot of crits, like 7 crits, and the extra attacks could definitely be very devastating, being on free damage already.
There we go.
Oh.
Alright, he managed to soul charge one. It's pretty good. Can't complain about that. And down comes the Incane. He does have the 2 damage for it.
He did lose 2 heals though in this exchange, so he is gonna be far-fetched to find any in recent. I think he only has like 1 more heal trigger left in deck.
Yeah, I would be very tempted to just full commit here if I'm in Niels' shoes.
I mean, there's those 2 heals you're talking about. Okay.
Incane goes in. Vanguard gets +10, 15, sorry. Counterblast 2 to gain the drive. The only thing I'm slightly concerned about here is that, again, he's on 3 damage, and Zefi has more than enough ways of getting to 5 attacks next turn with the Ascendant and an Inlet Pulse. And if he gets to 5 attacks, then his Flagbug is going to have triple card guard restrict, which could be very devastating, given that Niels isn't plussing that hard in retrospect.
Yeah,
No, he isn't.
Yeah, I think the play is usually, at least that's my personal take on the Flagberg matchup, is that you guard the rear guards and you just take the Vanguard if they have the guard restrict, because that's gonna waste so many cards to guard against the big number as it is.
So Zefi's gonna no guard the second attack. Crit coming down, it's well timed for sure. It evens up the damage, but Flagbug is definitely a deck that scales with Counterblast, so I don't know how much damage you really want to give him. 2 triggers coming in. Niels managed to claw back a bit of hand. Zefi also getting a defensive draw. Very good. I think I'd be tempted to swing at the rear guard here, honestly.
I think that's not an option for him. I think he just wants to try to close out this game as quickly as possible. He's down on heal triggers at the moment. So even though that he does have like 4 damage, 3 damage extra to work with in comparison to most of the archetypes, that doesn't guarantee him at all. Because on the second Flagberg reride, this could be a very dangerous turn for Zefi.
Yep, he's just... We originally saw him about to guard with Lathia, but it wasn't going to be enough because this Dauphin is... He needs to drop the extra dragon as well, because it's 23, so he needs the 5k more. Lathia does gain the 5k because the opponent's Vanguard is grade 2. But yeah, I think the attack was in at Vanguard in the end. Like you said, he just needs to push as hard as he can, given that he's lost this early tempo. And we're going to see what Zefi can do to build a board and fight back.
So he's contemplating what he wants to discard here, because every piece is very important to Flagberg, every single part of it.
And again, this is what I was saying about his ride deck and his soul options. If he wants to call the Ascendants from soul, he's going to need to soul blast his starter, which means he won't have soul for Inlet Pulse. And the only soul charge he has in the deck are all battle phase in the form of Price Trident and the crit triggers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a really good field setup. He has his 5 attacks, he has the Inland, the Ascendant Assault, also the Mantis for the extra 5k, and the 10k booster behind the Inlet. These are pretty good numbers.
Yeah, so he was able to save the soul by revealing a Flagberg from his hand. So it also does give Niels the information of, well, he has Persona Ride, so if I don't win next turn, I'm dealing with another big combo again. So, like you said, the usual play against Flagbug is to guard all the rears and take the Vanguard attack, which is what Niels is doing right here. So he guarded the first Inlet swing, and now he's probably gonna guard this Ascendance, I think.
I mean, it is a swinging in for 15. It's just a 5k guard. But Niels, it's basically both combo decks kind of really trying to be frugal with their resources and not trying to give each other an inch. It's very intense. I like this a whole lot.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic. I think both players also have a bit of recovery option, because Zefi has the Spirit of Blood and Condensation, and Niels does have the Desire Devil Xito, which allows him to reuse cards from the drop back into the soul. So guarding, there's an extra level of guarding to their playstyle, as they can use their drop zone to some extent, which makes things more dynamic and interesting as well.
Yeah, so Niels there took one of the rearguard attacks and went to 4, which was very dangerous. A crit from Zefi would have ended the game, but Zefi drove 2 blanks, and so Niels gets 1 more turn. Of course, Niels does have Greedon in Soul, so he would die on 7, and now that's the Persona Ride, so that's a second Greedon, so now any Dauphins he makes will gain the crit.
So how would you want to approach this turn here for Zefi? How would you want to guard any of these attacks coming in?
I would guard very liberally here. You're on 3. Sure, the risk of crit coming in is pretty high, but you have Persona Ride next turn, so I'd be looking to conserve as many pieces as I can, knowing that next turn I have Persona Ride and then I have Lethal.
Yeah, and there's also the option of you need to put yourself in a situation where you might not get damage tonight, and they just remove your Ascendant Assault with the final attack. Because let's say, for example, Zefi's hand doesn't have 2 multi-attackers, but only 1. Then you need to put yourself in a situation where your Ascendant Assault is gonna survive this turn, so you can recall the other column to enable those 5 attacks. So there's an interesting dynamic here of knowing when to guard, what to guard, when to say no guard, to tempt your opponent to still go for face, even though going for rearguard swing might be the optimal play here.
Yeah, I definitely want to attack into Ascendance here, because if nothing else, it denies Zefi of Counterblast, because he needs even if Zefi has the second Ascendance in hand, he needs 2 counterblasts to go, to get full combo next turn. 1 for the Flagberg, 1 for the Ascendance. So we'll see if the other attack. But at the same time, like saying, Niels is really far behind in pressure and tempo. He needs to try and close this game out. He needs to get as much aggro as he can. And we see that the Bubetsu's on the board along with the Incane, but he only has 2 open counterblast. He can't use both. So does he extend with the Bubetsu for an attack into, say, a Dauphin? Or does he just use the Incane to try and find crits, find the overtrigger, and close out the game as soon as he can?
It looks like it's right now one of the topics he's trying to figure out at the moment. Because Zefi here this telegraphs to me that he might not have a PG since he's considering the guard like this, or if he does have one, he's going to use the order here, gives him plus 20k shield.
Yep, that is Advance of the Great Cause. It's definitely one of my favorite card names ever. It's when I first saw this card, I thought, would you really play this? But it turns out that it is actually pretty useful. It's just a 20k shield, so it seems pretty solid. Works in this case. It's a nice 2 to pass, and I think we saw Niels get 2 blanks.
He's gonna soul charge his board here. Gonna put in the Bubetsu. He still has the Kennen access, so he can still choose. Let's see what he decides on.
Yeah, Kennen is a 20k because of Persona Ride, so that can still always go into the Ascendance for magic numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Also, important information that was given by Zefi is that he discarded the prize Trident for guarding, which is one of the cards that allows him to still play around potential damage tonight. Because even if he's capped at 1 face of damage, if he can call the prize Trident, he can still resolve the Flagberg skill, as prize Trident's countercharge effect goes on standby at the same time as Flagberg's on attack skill. So now him discarding here either means he has another one in hand, or he opens up himself for potential damage deny here.
Oh, and here's a crit.
He's no guarding. Crit and draw comes in, so it's only 2 damage coming in from Niels. So Zefi takes it, which is the damage that that's 2 damage that he definitely wants to have to play with. PG and blank. So nothing incredible, but yeah, there's now just a 40k Kennen, which is down, definitely going at face, seeing no defenses. PG comes down. Wow. So I think maybe Zefi's saying here that, okay, I'm just going to burn the PG now and I'm just going to try and win. Because we know he definitely has the Persona Ride, because he revealed it for the Ascendance Ride. So does he have another Flagberg? He does not. He has to push the inroad forward. And you think he discarded the Persona Ride for something else. Interesting.
So this is a pretty tough turn, actually. Since he doesn't have any access to inlet pulses. He doesn't have any spiritual body condensations, it seems like. And a lot of the pieces that he needed to kind of keep for this turn here, he ended up losing them.
Yeah, he can spiritual body condensation for a prize Trident, but prize Trident doesn't do anything anymore. Like, at this point, I would consider using condensation for the Adamantis, even. Well, there's one Adamantis. Can he find a second? The problem is that these numbers, without Persona Ride, this turn is really not that threatening.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a sticky situation for Zefi, because I think he really needed to rely on the guard restrict for Flagberg to even use something. Because even without the Persona Ride, I think he would have been in a good situation if he could, at the very least, generate 5 attacks. Not necessarily to get 5 attacks, but just for the Flagberg guard restrict here. But sadly, that's not going to be the case here, as we only have 4 attacks coming at Niels' face here, which is a bit unfortunate.
Which means that it does open up it does allow Niels to take one of these attacks, go to 6, and then just perfect guard the Vanguard with no concern or threat at all.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, given that Zefi can't get to 5 attacks, and Niels doesn't have Red Guards to retire with the 4 attacks. Yeah, I like this a lot. You attack with Vanguard now, just get the draw from the 3 attacks, and now you can put triggers on the Ascendance Assault, which is still a little bit of pressure.
And at the same time, if he doesn't get crits, I would just say, don't attack. Don't put yourself in the same situation as last time.
Oh, once it passes,
I mean,
he hits it.
That's a crit!
Oh, that was a 2 to pass because no Persona Ride, right? So, yeah, 1 card 2 to pass is really problematic with Zefi. So now, this is what, a 38k, which does get perfect guarded. So, yeah, Zefi needed to break the 2 to pass there, just wouldn't have enough. Niels comes down with the final greed on 1 Persona Ride. I think this is gonna be it.
Oof. I mean, we'll have to see. Let's see if he has enough here.
Niels has no counterblast to play with, but who needs counterblast? Drops his whole hand. He's just gonna say go for it, because he saw Zefi only drove check 20k worth of shield. It's not a lot.
No, I think, and there's no out as well. Well, there is an out here still. They're both at 5 actually, so he could still hit like a heal into a couple triggers here because we didn't see a lot of triggers from Zefi's side. So it's a possibility of that could be an out if he doesn't have a PG this turn.
Yeah, the crit for Zefi that he just draw check actually put him in a much favorable position that we might have that he might have guessed initially, because it allowed him to attack with the Transcendent without potentially forcing his opponent to 6. So healing is still on the table, over trigger is still on the table, and with not natural double crit coming from Niels, he still has the potential to survive. He's in a much better position than we saw last game. This is actually winnable for him.
Yeah, it's really difficult. Like, you know, without the persona, right? The fact that Greedon just continually gets bigger just makes it harder to guard compared to Flagberg. And we saw Zefi missing the persona, right? Attacking for columns of 15, 21, 13, 30, compared to Niels, which is going to be what, 38 minimum twice. Like, you know, that alone is already more shield than Zefi asked for last turn. So we'll see if he can make anything out of this, but we just got to count from the judges. There are 13 triggers visible for Nils. So if I'm in Zefi's shoes, I'm looking pretty confident there. But actually, maybe not, because Nils also only has like what, 6, 7, 8 cards in deck. 3 and 8 is still pretty compressed. I think I would bank on a no guard here, honestly.
I mean, eventually after the draft check, he'll just be a 50-50 anyway, right? So
yeah, you either heal or you don't. Yeah. Like, the benefit is that, you know, he has to perfect guard the second Vanguard swing, provided he can guard this one, and then there's still a 20k rear guard coming at your face plus triggers. So like, this is still not an easy turn to guard. And I think this is a 33k Greedon. OT comes down.
No! You hate to see it.
Niels is pretty good at that, it seems. So that's 2 crit base coming in, and a PG. Can Zefi heal OT? Nope. Condensation comes down, and Niels will make it to the finals.
Who would have thought? Greedon in finals of BRO 2022.
It was a very high, like, it was a high fidelity match. Like, a lot of them, they were trying to get their pieces in. They were trying to, like, get a whole of pressure down. And Zefi, it's one of those type of situations that if either of them stumbled, it was going to be a hard time to come back from. And Zefi was the one who blinked. So, alas, that's how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's just the weakness of Flagberg in the end. And, you know, like, congratulations, well done to Zefi for making it this far, but you know, as we saw, without Persona Ride, without that 5th attack to get plus 10k, you're just a 13k draw card. Like, your opponent has no rear guards to retire. Like, what are you really doing?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting matchup, as JJ pointed out. Like, they're very similar decks with combo decks, pieces reliant. They have drops on recursion, but even though the victory was given to Greedon here, as we saw, the Flagberg player was this close to winning, as he ended his last turn with the Greedon player basically needed to dedicate his entire hand to even make a board here. If he managed to get his Persona right or get the 5th attack, so he get the guard restrict, this game could have been entirely different, as that would be generate an entire different game state. And that's how close this game was, where one card just made the difference here.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, I think it's also on the other side of things, as we saw, the difference between Greedon and Flagberg is that even if it doesn't fully combo, Greedon still has a game to play, whereas Flagberg's kind of a limp noodle unless you like really high roll. And I think, you know, unfortunately for Zefi, he wasn't able to find his full engine, his full pieces, and so, you know, he's just gonna be like, whereas Greedon's like, bang!
If we go back to JJ's favorite analogies, one was a train hitting a wall, and one was like just a bike was slamming into the sidewalk.
That's exactly it. So we do have an update from the other side of the table. So Man Long, the People's Champion, has beaten Kai. So Bruce makes it to the finals. We'll have a Bruce versus Greedon Dark State show in the finals. Meanwhile, Zefi and Kai, both AO players, will be competing for the 3rd spot playoff. So we're going to take a quick break while they're set for that, and we'll see you all just after in a while. Don't go anywhere.
Months now, you know, at this time of shooting. Yeah, and you do marketing for Vanguard.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So as you can see, we have prepared a little bit of snacks and coffee, tea, and some drinks for us. Yeah. So before we begin the interview, what would you like? Coffee, or tea, or just water for you?
Tea.
Tea?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, Serene. So you are the marketer for Vanguard. So maybe you could market to us. You know, just a bit of the kind of work that you do on a day-to-day routine.
Okay, I do. As a marketer, I mainly do the marketing materials. Then, so there's like you manage the stuff that goes on to social media, and then you do newsletters, and then you also liaise with other departments like the design team, the video team, to make sure that you get accompanying materials to put together. I mean, they go together to present to fans.
Okay.
Content. Yeah.
So you actually do have to communicate with a lot of different departments for your job as marketing.
Definitely.
Okay.
Because I mean, as marketing is not, I mean, not everything comes out of the marketer alone. So like say for example, I mean the banners, definitely you need the design team, and then if there are video showcases, then there's a specialized team for that. So I mean, I think that's also one of the good parts of being a marketer, because I mean, you get to work with many people while wearing many hats. At the end, you get something nice to present to the fans and viewers. I think that's a nice end products that you can get out of marketing.
And then as the marketing in charge for Vanguard, which is one of our best-selling titles, do you ever feel like the pressure to perform, you know, as compared to, let's say you were to handle something else? Would you feel like, oh, I need to, you know, step up my game all the time because you're feeling all this pressure?
I would say half on this. It is natural to feel pressured to deliver more results as compared to other products. But at the same time, from a marketing standpoint, you have a lot of data to work with. So it's good that I'm thankful that I have more data and insights to look at and to see, okay, so from there, how can I improve, or what kind of new things I can present to everyone. Yeah.
Okay, now I understand as marketing, you deal with quite a bit of sensitive information, especially information probably from Japan. But is there anything that you can share with us? That how were you able to use the data that you mentioned in order to do something like a marketing campaign?
Actually, for data, it can come in a variety. So
Hello. We are here at the grand finals of the Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 EU Standard Tournament. And what a journey we've taken here so far. Guys, this is it. Are you ready?
I cannot say that I'm not ready. So I am, definitely. We had 8 competitors going into one ring. Only one can leave. What about you, Eric? How you feel?
I'm feeling conflicted about this. This top 8 has been a roller coaster ride. Like, I was not expecting the final 3 match to be these 2 decks facing up against each other this season. Like, Greedon actually coming here in top 8, clapping cheeks left, right, and center, and just going ham. Like, these are things I love to see. And I'm curious if Greedon is able to take names for the entire tournament, or if Bruce is the final boss of Biro 2022.
Yeah, I'm just shedding a tear for those 2 Bafsagra players that made top 8 and can no longer earn their Trick Moon Hot Stamp promo. But let's take a quick look at the bracket to see who is in the finals. Here it is, Niels versus Manlong, duking it out for the #1 spot. And of course, unfortunately, as we saw, Zefi didn't quite make it, but they are still playing against WCC's Kai for the 3rd and 4th playoff. There is still 1 promo to play for. But let's not wait too long. Let's just jump straight into the deck. We're going to take one last quick look at Niels' deck for posterity. You know, we've seen it. This is going to be the third time today we've seen it, but let's just refresh your memory one more time. And I think if there's one card we have to draw attention to, it is definitely going to be the Dauphin there. You know, like really coming out, making a big difference, blind soul charging Greedon, gaining that crit pressure, really putting in a lot of work. But I think the thing we really want to talk about is Man Long's Bruce deck. That's going to be the big spice here because, you know, we was discussing like at the beginning of the day, in every single way possible, this is very different to what you'd expect from a normal Bruce list. And this is already considering the difference between grade 3 Bruce and grade 4 Bruce. So Man Long's chosen to go for the grade 4 route, but then he's also chosen to play a lot more early game pieces like the Marjorie, like the, I think her name's Margaret? Or Megan, the grade 2 there, you see next to Derek. You know, again, like some lists have been cutting Derek altogether, and it's just like, you know, he's playing full dive instead of pandemonium tactics. This is a lot more like, you know, all in on the final rush. Like I said at the beginning of the day, to me, like looking at these card choices, the fact that every single card in his deck has the words final rush on it, I would say that he's playing a grade 4 grade 4 Bruce list that doesn't actually care about riding grade 4, and you know, that might work for him. You know, it's kind of negating the big weakness of grade 4 Bruce, right?
That's right. I feel we're currently in dark state supremacy. Like most of the grade 3s with dark states don't really need their persona rights to be active, to use their skills, to do anything. Usually they just need named effects and named attributes. And the fact that like Niels' deck also works that way, and Manlong's deck works that way. You know, dark states probably might be where it's at. I might need to move there.
I mean, with the new support coming on the horizon, with more new ride line, Chrono Jet, Dark States is the place to be currently. So, I would agree, JJ.
Yeah, definitely gonna be interesting. Like, you know, again, like, I part of me almost wants Man Long to win, just so we can talk to him in the interview, be like, you know, why no Quenlu? Why no Brian? Why no Lyle? But, you know, again, so far, Niels has gone through with an over trigger on his Greedon twice so far. We'll see if he can do it a third time and stop Man Long from doing a back-to-back regional champion. But I think the players are ready, so let's jump straight into the game. Alright, Niels there on the left, Man Long on the right. Again, two players who are no strangers to the spotlight, and we will see how it goes. And I think, again, this is one matchup now where, just like with the Thagrea, Man Long's deck really has to be turn 4 for it to go off because everything is restricted to final rush. So if Man Long can go first here, that's going to give him a lot of advantage. But if he goes second, he's going to have to spend his grade 2 turn defending a Greedon, and then his grade 3 turn defending a Greedon before he can start playing the game. And that's going to be really concerning if he gets to that point. So let's see.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's much harder for him to also return the favor of the pressure, because if he goes second, then that means he needs to put down pieces to be aggressive, but those pieces don't really do anything, thus making them vulnerable. But it looks like that Man Long is going to go first, so that's a good position for him already.
Yep, that's exactly what you want to see. You know, it's a good start, and it means that he does get to he only needs to block one turn of Greedon pressure before he can start swinging punches back.
Yeah,
he does also soul charge a PG. Actually, I just saw Man Long soul charging a PG from his starter, from his ride there, and because he's not playing. Oh, I keep forgetting the card's name. Proto Bulb. He can't add that PG from soul back to hand.
So let's see. He's swinging in for 16 here with Inkay. 16 is gonna get him a perfect guard. Damage. That's another grade 2. It seems.
I think that's a Megan. Yeah. And this is the thing, like, you know, Man Long's deck is all about consistency, but it's not about specific pieces. Like, you know, he can get to Soul very easily. He can make a board very easily between Derek and Marjorie. Like, he can get power with Wade and Geardoba. But, you know, when you need PGs to survive a Greedon, like, it's going to be quite hard for him to find those, I think.
Yeah, that's right. So it looks like it's going to discard a heal here. Boshoku, revealing Greedon for that free draw. That's so good. And that's one of the only cards that has ever made me mad when seeing it resolve. It's just so free. I just gotta reveal my right deck for a free card. Of course, I'll take it.
So both players playing a relatively slow early game here. You know, no aggro, no rush, like no committing to the board. Just trying to set up. And Man Long there goes into his grade 3 and just swings. No, nothing. I like this a lot. This is him saying, look, I just need my pieces. I just need to get there. Front trigger is unfortunately wasted, but it does even out the damage. Niels loses Dauphin.
Interesting enough, he did discard his Great for Bruce, so that probably tells us he has another copy in hand, or maybe not, but I assume he would never discard Great 4 if he doesn't have another copy for next turn, as that's his big explosive turn moving turn 4.
Exactly, like we said, his deck is built to function without the Grade 4, but obviously if you can have the Grade 4, you'd rather have the Grade 4.
That's right. So he's going to use the Bushiroad skill. Since he wrote it the Greedon, he's going to be able to soul charge another copy of Bushiroad into his soul here.
For more power. The other thing I want to draw attention to there is you can see Manlong has a lot of cards in his hand. It looks like 9, maybe 10. But at the same time, this is Bruce. That's a combo deck. Most of those cards in his hand are going to be combo pieces. So I think Manlong's guard values aren't as high as we might think.
So I think this turn, which I will also point note here, he did call the Inkay early. Like obviously you probably want to try to save it for Persona, right? But I like the committal, the early committal of it, of having an 8k booster, which does allow Manlong not to just give him a 1 to pass on a guard here. He needs to overcommit if he wants to at least stop him from doing damage. So this is really nice.
Third Bishoku coming down, which is going to get sucked in with Greedon. Niels does soul charge some triggers, which is unfortunate, but it wasn't the over trigger. And like I said, we'll see if he can drop the third over trigger. Third game in a row. The fourth Bishoku comes down, and a Jito. So he's probably going to spend all of his counter blast on the Inkane, is what I'm expecting. And still have the Dauphin for backup. So 2 to pass here. 1 check.
That's a draw. Oh,
Oh, it's a
It's a
heal.
heal,
So
yeah.
he breaks the 2 to pass, goes down to 1, which is amazing, and 2 damage coming in from Manlong.
That's actually a big tempo swing here, going from 2 to 2 to 3 to 1, with still a big Vanguard swing coming. That's big.
The only downside is that he's healed out of his Inkane.
I do feel though another thing as well with the Zito, he probably could have like soul charged the Dauphin, but he wants to soul charge the critical trigger, I guess. He could have had another desired level. I mean, it doesn't really matter in this instance, but
Yeah, I think healing out of the Inkane is the downside there. Oh, another trigger crit coming down.
Another
Double
crit! Oh,
is that it?
Is it all over on turn 3? No way. Come on, Neil. Come on, Manlong. Heal, OT, anything?
That's it! Oh,
That's it? Wow.
This Greedon player is just here to clap cheeks. That's all it is.
He's too strong. He's too strong. He's just too strong. That's all it is.
Man, like, and we can see Manlong there, his hand full of combo pieces. He had the second grade 4. He had a board full of attackers. He had everything he needed. But he just took that. Like, we saw he had 2 triggers in hand. He could have guarded this Greedon swing. He definitely could have survived. But unfortunately, he just, ironically, he got too greedy, decided to no guard, and Niels is like, I'm just gonna punish you for it, and that's
Built different.
multiple Vanguard checks will get there. Drive checks win games. It's a fundamental rule of Vanguard, but that is it. Wow, I mean, if you had told me at the beginning of yesterday that Greedon is just gonna hit triggers and win the whole thing, I would definitely been like, I don't know about that, Chief. But here we are. Greedon just hits triggers and wins games.
Yeah.
It's just breath. You just take a breath away.
There's very, very rare instances I usually have like a long monologue, be able to talk about something, but it just came down to Manlong possibly could have just like maybe tried to guard the first initial. He did the first 2 to pass already. He did end up doing the. Maybe he should have tried to aim for like a OT to pass on the first attack and then take the second one possibly, but then that's a little bit too early. But then you go from 2, you go to 3. Yeah, maybe do that. Yeah, maybe that's a possibility. That's the only thing I can think about.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the 2 to pass on the first Vanguard swing was totally justifiable because again, that's the smallest Greedon swing. It's only going to be 13.
True.
Every other Greedon's going to be like 18, 28, Persona Ride, etc., etc. Bishoku's going in. He only had 1 Bishoku in Soul at that point, so it was only just 18. That would have been the easiest to guard. And sure, your 2 to pass gets broken with 2 triggers. It happens, but then at that point, then you would have considered no passing the second Vanguard swing, which is, granted, a lot harder, but that's like, what, 28, 48, that was a 53k Greedon coming in, and he didn't have PGs because he soul charged 1 and damaged the other one, in fact, damaged 2 later on.
Yeah.
And, it sucks, but, at that point, you have to be like, I need to keep combo pieces, I need to do this, I have to do what I can, and maybe, no guarding was his only out.
I think for that reason, you should then no pass the first attack, because you quite literally cannot guard any way at all against the second.
I agree.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
if you see two Bishokus
Yeah.
on the table, it's like,
Yeah.
I can't guard the second swing. It's gonna be 43k. Yeah.
Also, an important thing is that he, as you pointed out, he had 2 triggers in his hand, so he could make it to the pass or no pass the second finger swing. But probably he was thinking, if I do that for this attack, there's still a rear guard standing. All those triggers gonna go to the rear guard, and I cannot guard that. So with it in mind, he, as JJ pointed out, he should have no pass the Vanguard swing and just say, OT is the only thing that can win you the game in this situation, and just go with that. So even if he cannot guard the second greed on swing, he can just take it because he has all the damage. But at the same time, he put the greed on player, he put himself in the situation to potentially win on this crit turn, because as JJ pointed out early in the game, he dedicated a booster on the Vanguard. So Manlong couldn't comfortably guard the Grade 1, the Grade 2's Vanguard swings, because it was always going to be a one to pass, and just couldn't comfortably guard with a trigger, which put him in an awkward situation where he was already at higher damage going into a greed on turn, which is a dangerous thing. Vanguards that restand with full drive checks always are pretty dangerous with triggers in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And like again, when you're dealing with a restanding Vanguard like Greedon, every single trigger is basically doubled in value. And like we said, the downside of playing Bruce with this, his heavy grade count of 4 copies of Marjorie, 4 grade 4s, is that 4 Hellblast full dives, is that Manlong ends up with having just way less shield than the average deck to guard him, to defend himself with. And all of his rear guards he needs for combo pieces, so he's relying entirely on his triggers to get there, to to keep him alive. And he had some, but it just wasn't quite enough. But yeah, that's going to be it for the finals. I think we're going to take a bit of a pause here, just get the bracket ready, finalize everything. And so join us after a short break where we'll have a winner's interview with Nils. Alright, welcome back everyone to the end of the Bushiroad Rumble Online 2022 EU Standard Tournament. It has been an up and down ride, and honestly, it's been everything I wanted. All 3 games we've seen have been exciting, they've been excellent, and we finally have the final results. So, without any further delay, I'm sure you would love to hear more of our voices, but let's take a look at the brackets at the very end of the day. So, JJ, walk us through this.
All right, so we have this apocalyptic saga of strong competitors facing against each other in the top 8. So as follows, we did have Karan Patel versus Nils. Nils being able to make it into there. Sadly enough, Karan Patel not being able to make it. We also have Zefi playing that awesome Flagbird list, playing against DuSS Machina, make it in. Then we have Kai, Roman TCG, and we have Atagag versus Manlong as well. Sadly enough, most of them have not been able to make it in. We do have one final combatant who was able to make it, and that was our homeboy Nils.
Yep, so congratulations once again to Nils, who's our people's champion. Commiserations to Kai, Manlong, and Zefi. I did just hear now that Kai got 3rd place, so the content creator curse, not quite broken yet, but very, very close. But I think let's jump now to the interview with our champion, Nils. And here he is in all his glory. Good morning, Nils. How are you feeling?
I'm quite tired.
I mean, sure, yeah. You just won a big tournament. That should fill you with a bit of energy, right?
Oh yeah, I slept 3 hours today, so I kind of want to go back to sleep.
Oh, okay then.
It was a fun ride, for sure.
All right, well, yeah, congratulations again. You definitely swept through the top 8 in, I would say, a pretty commanding fashion. 2 games of over trigger, followed by breaking a 2 to pass with 4 triggers on your restand turn. So I think the big question on everyone's mind is, why Greedon?
I actually don't own any other decks. That's why I play Greedon.
All right.
I've been playing Greedon for a very long time. It's the deck I'm the most confident with, and it's the only one I own. My friends were like, you can borrow some decks of us, but I felt most confident with this, and I believe in Greedon, so I brought it.
All right, well there you go. Your faith was well placed, and you're well rewarded. And I think it just goes to show you that if you know your deck and you're confident and you know the ins and outs and you know the situations, you can do whatever the hell you want. So yeah, well done again. JJ, Eric, what have you guys got to say?
What's it been like for you in your community? Because you did talk about like, hey, like some of your friends did want you to play with some of their lists and stuff, and some of their decks. You're like, no, greed, greed on his mind. What's your community have been like? 'Cause they seem to be very charitable.
Yeah, they're very. What was the question again? Sorry.
No, what's your community like? What got you into playing Vanguard in general?
Oh,
'Cause that was going to be my follow-up question. But what's your community like?
Played Vanguard since I was 12. I am currently 19, so for 7 years. I've been with the game almost at the start of G, a little before in Legion. And we've had like people have come and go from the community, but we still are the core players that have been playing for quite a long time. So we're quite good friends, and we borrow out decks to each other. Like it's almost like a friend group of sorts, more than anything else. And Greedon is maybe not in the people's eyes, maybe not be the best deck of the format. I would disagree, but people maybe think it's not the best deck. And my friends shared the same opinion, but I was confident, as I said before, so that's why I chose to pick it.
You're proving everybody wrong today.
Yeah, Greedon's best deck. Greedon's best deck.
There you go. Like that's a good question from JJ, because I was actually going to mention. I was going to bring up for those of you who are watching who aren't in Europe. Just to note, Niels is from Sweden, and I don't think Sweden's had a BCS in since 2016, 2015, right? Like they've always been like forgotten in a way. And but despite that, there are I know like 3 or 4 Swedish players who are very there's like Niels clearly just won BRO. I know a guy called Ashley. He's been around for a while. There are a few people from Sweden. So the fact that throughout Europe, no matter what, even if it's not like an established community, not like a well-known community, there is like still always Vanguard to play. And Niels is showing you that with hard work and dedication, you can really make it. Eric, what have you got to say?
Well, I want to a bit build up on JJ's question. Like, we know your community, how it's established and how you started the game. Yeah. Well, one thing I'm curious about, and I think this is also nice to know for newer players and they want to branch into competitive play. How did you prepare for this particular tournament, especially with only owning one deck? Because I know some players from my neighborhood, they usually have a whole plethora of decks, so they can play test a lot, all these matchups. How did you prepare for this particular tournament?
I have to owe it to my friends or the people at my locals, especially Stefan and Aron. They are exceptional players. Stefan finished 15th, I think, this BRO. And Aaron came top 8 last one, so they're phenomenal players, and they really helped me with the matchups and the fundamentals of the game, as well as some other people like Tavan and David also helped me play test. Since our community, we don't have a one big player that owns all deck. We have players that specialize in their own deck, and that really helped me, I think, to prepare for this tournament because we got the ins and outs of one-trick ponies.
Oh,
in a way, as you should say.
Yeah, I can relate that. I think JJ as well, because it feels a bit like the Netherlands, where we have these players that are very honed into one particular deck.
You have somebody across the way who probably plays Orphis, and you have somebody across the corner who just plays Lyrical Monasterio decks, and that's all they play all day. So yeah, that's a true sentiment.
That's really cool, seeing how that ties into your community as well. They definitely were the instrumental decision in helping you prepare and practice. So looking back then across the tournament, how did you feel throughout Swiss? You went I think X2 at the end of Swiss, and you did pretty well there as well. Any standout moments? What did you enjoy about the tournament?
The diversity of decks. My top 8 run was extremely fun, facing Tigreya and Flagberg, which I think are some would call unconventional decks. And seeing how they played out was really interesting. And also since they did really well, so they knew what they were doing with their decks. So I saw lines of plays I've never seen before. So that made it really interesting to witness how those decks played from another perspective from the ones I've gotten from my friends, for example. And in Swiss, I faced a lot of Gravidius and Parissans is what I think I remember. I also faced a Babsagra Romaine in round 1. So there were quite a diversity. So it was very fun to play against a lot of decks. It was just not one deck I faced a lot of times.
So saying going a bit back before too as well, you did say that you played since the beginning of the game, correct?
No,
more or less,
yeah.
G era, Legion era. Did you happen to play any of those decks as well? Did any of those cue you into how they feel in comparison to them? Did you play any of the previous formats? Did you play V and Premium?
No. So I only played Standard. I've only been playing the reboots. I've never branched out to other formats. But my first deck was Chronofang. That was a fun deck.
I can approve. I can approve.
Now we're talking like the G7 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. No, because it then gives me a better idea as to like what kind of play you are, like what kind of decks that you aspire to pick. And Chronofang and Greedon kind of feel very similar in a way, right? They buy their cards, they get free resources, you get to pressure your opponent while doing so, and it's also within the dark state. So hey, you know. That's awesome. Is there any other archetypes or future support and things that you're looking forward towards for your archetype?
For Greedon, I think the set 6 looks pretty good, but I'm maybe planning on ditching Greedon for Leonard set 6.
Oh no! The betrayal!
Don't tell Greedon I said that. But the Greedon, on to Greedon, the Greedon, the support looks pretty good, especially the promo, which I think when another copy of it is placed, I can buy something like you can buy a copy of itself and call another one. And I really remember the effect, but it's quite good.
Yeah, it was another extender, I believe, like the bunny thing. I keep forgetting the name. That's a really nice card, yeah.
All right. So I think to wrap it all up, have you got anything else you want to say? Like any shout-outs you want to make? And like you have a few seconds of camera time.
Yeah.
The world is your oyster.
Okay, so shout-outs to first Aaron and Stefan, phenomenal players. Tavan, David, Anton, Alex, the towel as well. The towel is sponsored by Alex, so shout out to Alex. And then have I forgotten anything? Oliver as well, I guess, and Nico. And the terrible judges of Max and Matt. No, I'm joking, they were very good. Extremely good judges. But shout out to them as well. Thank you.
Alright. So, well, once again, you have the champion, Nils. Well done. Once again, congratulations on your victory. Go get your well-deserved nap. And once again, thank you for joining us. I think you can just give a few seconds, hand of applause, really showing us what Standard is all about.
Wow.
Thanks very much. So we're going to cut it back to us. We can send you all off and wrap it all up for today. So, gentlemen, we are at the end of BRO season for Vanguard. I still have one more week of Weiss to go through, but let's spend a few minutes. Tell me about what your highlights. Like reflect on the last 3 weeks for me.
I feel I'll break it down for every single set. Premium was pretty awesome, pretty relatively diverse decks. We did have a lot of fishes and a lot of aquatic things going on there for a while. Never said Q-tire so much in a single sentence. So that was a fun experience. Resolving Q-tire every single turn was just fun to experience because it kind of allowed you to see like how diverse people's lists were. And then we also had V Premium as well that kind of also has some similar aspects to, but we saw a lot of Gurgwit. We were able to dodge the Gurgwit, which was awesome. But outside of that being archetype that people play a whole lot of, I think one of the biggest named things that I would see this whole entire event for 3 weeks, deck diversity. A lot of people did kind of go into it thinking, you just automatically see all these good decks. And yeah, sure, you do see a lot of representation, but not all of them make the cut. Not all of them didn't. So it was really awesome to see that a lot of people were just trying their best, playing decks that they love. And that's what I love about watching European BROs or European PCSs. There's just a lot more diverse decks around here, which is awesome.
I cannot agree more with what JJ said. Like, without rehashing the same things, just to add on top of that, the main takeaway that I've seen from the last 3 tournaments is basically 2 main things. That's spiciness and a lot of vehicle analogies, and I love every part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, the thing I love about Vanguard is that all 3 formats, there's something different for everyone. We saw with Premium really pushing the boundaries of knowledge. Like, how well do you know cards? How well do you know your deck? How well do you know your opponent's deck? Can you play around first strike? Can you play around this? Can you play around that? Whereas with V, V was a lot more about, raw, fundamental skill. Like, can you make numbers? Can you guard effectively? Can you juggle your abilities? And then Standard is all about, the excitement. Like, okay, I need to do this, like, changing your game plan on the dot. Like, okay, and now I need to keep my board empty. Now I need to, like, make this rear guard. Now I need to combo off in this way. It's like, it's just all these different requirements, just really goes to show you that the fact that we see the same names, constantly topping up in Top Cut across all 3 formats, across all 3 regions, just goes to show you how much skill is involved in Vanguard. And it's always exciting to see, like, not just to see, the same names and the same decks popping up, but also see the differences between the region. Like JJ said, in Europe, we have a lot of clan mains, a lot of loyalists who always playing their deck, and to see them like go all the way is just, it kind of warms your heart a little bit. But yeah, I think you guys both put it excellently, and I honestly just don't have much more to say other than thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to Bushiroad for hosting this event. Thank you for having us. And yeah, I think just to wrap it up, once again, I've been Ben, also known as Zistral from Yellow Card Vanguard, joined by JJ, also known as GG Mr. Rogers, and Eric, known as Mr. Time Mute from Vanguard Insider. Thank you both. I couldn't have asked for 2 better commentators to work this event with. And unfortunately I won't get to see you guys next week, but I will definitely see the 2 of you, and hopefully our champion Nils, and as well as anyone from Europe watching at home at BCS season coming up in a few weeks time. And once again, all the dates are up now, there's more to come. Plan your travel, plan your accommodation, and just, I think the final words I'll say is play Vanguard, enjoy Vanguard, have a lovely day, and goodbye.